Good evening, televiewers. You're welcome to Prime on my Media Prime. This evening, we're going to be looking at a headline carried by the Guardian Post newspaper that says the Anglophone crisis ranked world's third most neglected crisis. We are going to be asking and understanding why this crisis that has been going on for about 5 years now has not actually caught the attention of the international community, the African community as well. We are also going to be asking the question why core conflict resolution experts have not been given the pride of place as far as resolving the crisis ongoing in the Northwest and Southwest is concerned. Cameroon has been in crisis for over 5 years, and majority of those we see attempting to fix the problem are either ministers, governors, government officials. We tempted to ask whether Cameroon does not have conflict resolution experts. If they exist, when then is the nation going to make use of them when the nation itself is not too well as far as our conflicts are concerned? We are discussing this with our panelists who are in the house already. Professor Mark Anthony, Panafricanist, is in the house with us. Good evening and welcome.
Thank you, Leo, for this opportunity. Good evening to my fellow panelists. Good evening to Cameroonians all over the world. Good evening to Africans, wheresoever they are. And to those of you actually dedicated to this, to watching this particular program, the Prime Hour, I'm sure this evening we will do service to the particular topic that has been presented to you this evening. Thank you, and stay glued to your TV.
Okay, we also are going to be receiving G. Lucas. He's a member of Cameroon Civil Society. We're glad to have you all the way from Boya, Southwest Regional Capital.
Good evening, Mr. Liu, and good evening, televiewers. It's a pleasure to be here tonight.
Okay, also while we hope to get connected to Mr. Mbah Ano-Ebie, it's very difficult to get through to him. Sitting in here for him is Tamai Jarvis. We're glad to have you, Ta.
Good evening, Mr. Liu. Good evening to those who are watching us in Way Village, my village. And of course, good evening to the peace-loving people of Moya who are preparing themselves for the coronation of His Majesty Edward Moninge, who is a second-class chief. I'm sure we'll be down there in Moya, the peace-loving people of Moya. Good evening, Yaoundé. Good evening to also Bamenda. Good evening, Cameroon.
Okay. We also are very shortly going to be receiving Prince Joel Mukage, who is already in the studio yet to take his seat. I'll be presenting him very shortly, but I'll start with you, Professor Mark Anthony. We are going to start with this article by the Guardian Post that says that the Anglophone crisis is ranked world's third most neglected crisis. This is not the first time studies are coming out to also herald this. How do we understand? Is it that the magnitude is not loud enough to catch international attention?
Thank you again, Leo, for the opportunity. I want to begin by asking the question, who is this international community we are talking about that has actually neglected the crisis that's happening in Cameroon? You see, most of the time, some of us, we fail to understand why the so-called United Nations organization was created. After the Second World War took place, when the European tribes actually had a fight among themselves, which was later on termed a world war because they were colonial masters of most African nations. They brought in Africans into their fights, and it became what we call a world war. And so that body was created to protect them from fighting amongst themselves again. And this time around, they have oriented their target to Africa. So this particular body, the United Nations, was not created to protect African nations. Neither was it created to favor any African nation. It was created for the good of the European nation. That's why when you look at what we call the Security Council in the United Nations, it has Russia, which is a European country. It has France, which is a European country. It has Britain, which is a European country. And we are talking of the United States. United States is a child born out of immigrants from Europe, which implies that we have 4 European nations inside the so-called United Nations Security Council. And you have a stranger from China, who is China, from Asia. And so in this case, you ask the question, where is Africa? Africa is not in that particular Security Council as a permanent member because Africa is a farm for the European organization called the UN and for the European nations. And so at the end of the day, if there is a problem that is happening in Africa, if it does favor any of these so-called Security Council members, then there will be no say concerning it. And so if we say that a crisis in Cameroon is happening and it is being neglected, the question we should be asking is, who are those who are supposed to respond to it? Because I think that problems in Africa are supposed to be primarily handled by Africans. If we have a problem in Cameroon, we should have been thinking as Cameroonians on how to settle our problems. If it goes above us, then we can now go to the to ask for the let's say we are in a CEMAC. The CEMAC should come in. If the CEMAC cannot come in, then we can move to the Central African Community, which is bigger than the CEMAC. Then if it's impossible, then the UN comes in. I mean, the African Union comes in. But if it happens that we bypass all these bodies, then we are expecting the United Nations, which primarily are the creators of the problem, then we are having a serious, I think we should be having amnesia, if I have to say that, because it seems as if we fail to understand those who created the so-called problem that we have. If we can go back into history, we'll recall that the situation we have today came as a result of a situation where 2 different trust territories were placed under different European nations to cater for towards their so-called self-determination and independence. It later on came to a state where they worked and brought them together after having forced them to learn 2 different cultures, imported cultures, invested into them. They brought them together, knowing very well that these 2 might not work together. And at the end, we come up and we are fighting among ourselves. They know exactly what they did. And so they have to neglect us because it does not favor their cause. If in case what we are asking for, the people of the crisis, the purpose for which it started, if that is granted, that will be removing food from the mouth of the French. And also it will be creating a problem, an imbalance. And at the end of the day, it has to be neglected because it has nothing to do with the so-called international community. The international community does not see a problem in Cameroon that they need to solve. Okay,
I followed an interview recently granted by Thibault Nagy, who was Under Secretary for the United States of Cameroon for Africa. Yes, who consistently has said that if Cameroonians are waiting for the international community to step into what is happening in Cameroon, it's going to be difficult. He even expressed, he has said that not once, twice, that even he has very little faith in what is happening in Switzerland, called the Swiss-led talks, and he has said essentially that it is Cameroonians who should find a solution to their problem. But why is it that we are surprised at the fact that the international community has still not taken interest in what is happening in Cameroon?
Yeah, the international community will not take interest in what is happening in Cameroon, not because they don't like Cameroonians, but because Africa generally is not seen as a continent which deserves peace, because the peace of Africa means that the rest of Europe should perish. We are seeing what is happening today in Ukraine. It started just a few months ago, and if you look at the quantity or the amount of weaponry which have been sent to that country and attention, you would understand that the interests of the entire Europeans and the entire Western countries are at stake. Like my brother earlier said, the settlers of America are not people who came from the blues. They are still Europeans, and they have a common interest. Now, one major reason why Europeans will not focus on Africa when crisis is concerned is because the crisis in Africa is a leeway for them to take off or remove all what they have beneath the ground. As a matter of fact, humans in Africa are considered by the same Africans as humans, while the Europeans do consider them as diamonds and other things, which they think if you leverage on them properly, then you're going to have exactly what you want. So Europeans are not those that will solve our problems. And what is very disheartening is that when most African leaders get to know this, what they do is that they tend to be more wicked than they used to be to their people. As a matter of fact, when you hear Europeans talking about Cameroon being a sovereign state, it will cause most of the persons who do not want this crisis to come to an end to think that they have given them that upper hand to do exactly what they want, whereas it ought not to be so, because we all know that the problems we are talking about today in Africa, where DRC Congo is ranked the first in terms of the neglected crisis, you have Burkina Faso, which is the second, and you have Cameroon, which is the third. And the reasons are very obvious, Mr. Leo. I think what we need to do at this point in time is we should sit back and say no to what is happening around us. If we want to allow this crisis to keep on moving to a worse state, then it is obvious that no other person is going to solve it. Now, for those who kept giving a negative report in terms of what was required on the ground, we did see when Senator Mundi was released or was rescued, she said what is happening there is war. And you should not forget that others have said it is not war. And now the report that she gives tells the world that, yes, something is happening here. So these are the kind of information that some have been given. We saw when Patricia Scottler came to Cameroon. We saw how when the others came to Cameroon, the situation was not presented as it is. We also did watch the president in France when he talked about the crisis, when he made mention of why his country is in crisis. You could vividly recall that he himself said that, well, he thinks that the problem of the country is the trying to assimilate the others or to make the others be like the others. And it isn't about that alone.
Are you saying that the international community is not taking as much interest in what is happening because they don't know what is happening? What of the case in Burkina Faso? What of the case in DRC?
Yes.
Do they really need to be deceived when today we can vividly see what's happening?
Of course. Now the way the community works is that they believe in the persons they have on the ground to give them the information. Can you see what Volodymyr Zelensky is doing in Ukraine? Every day, every morning, evening, afternoon, he speaks.
Are you telling me that the international community needs the senator to tell them what is happening when we have international agencies in Cameroon? Are they not aware? We've seen documentaries of guys who have gone to Manu and all these places.
When they put up their report, Mr. Leo, what you need to note is that articles that have been written concerning Ukraine within this
we are talking Cameroon.
No, I just want to give you an example.
Okay.
The articles that have been written concerning Ukraine within these few months is 3 times more than the articles that have been written concerning Burkina Faso, Cameroon, and DRC Congo for these years. And who gives this information in the first place? The white man cannot have access to Bui without the people on the ground to give that information. We have the agencies that are working on the ground. They are the ones to give this information. And sadly, because of the reprisals that we have also, to an extent, the media cannot give it. We have seen cases where media men have reported what is happening, and they were reprimanded because of what they said, whereas it was what happened. And we have seen cases where others have been on suspension because of what they said. So at the end of the day,
can we say
yes,
people were killed in Akwaya recently?
Yes.
The videos are everywhere.
Yes.
People were killed in Ngarbu.
Yes.
The videos are everywhere.
Yes.
People are killed in Bengui.
Yes.
Everywhere. The images is it possible to hide any such information today?
It's okay. Yeah, there is an extent to which such an information is given to the right quarters. And what you need to note, Mr. Leo, is such as what we have today in Ukraine. I'll use Ukraine because the issue where the Norwegian Refugee Council said conflicts in Africa are not giving attention, or rather they are giving more attention to Ukraine, which started just yesterday. It's, yes, you get it. It's because you get it because, one, Africa is the farm. Two, the information and those who need to take this information, they have a high lobbying team in place. When such data are gathered, videos are gathered, before it gets to such quarters, they are touched. So what you think they are receiving is not what they are receiving. It is the reason why we will still, I keep calling on the civil societies on the ground. I will call on the media on the ground. I will call on the state institutions because they have a responsibility.
It means yes. If I go by what you are saying, it means that the President of the Republic is not aware of what is happening.
Severally, we have heard persons, like I said, Senator Mundi, I want to take the case of Senator Mundi just yesterday. Senator Mundi, before she was actually kidnapped, never knew there was a war. She thought that it was some kind of a strike that was somewhere. But the moment she was taken to the forest.
Where does she live?
Well, she's in Cameroon. But she made mention, she told the world that there is war. It therefore means she has always known that the war is
I would have loved to have Baka Derek, because Baka Derek says that if there is somebody who lives very freely in Bamenda for this year, it's Senator Mundi.
It's unfortunate.
She walks around in Bamenda every day because she's well known there. So I don't want us to give a misleading information that she lives in Yaoundé. She lives in Bamenda. Yes, but how do we understand? Is it the fact that the international community does not have the exact information, or the fact that they are not really interested in projecting what is happening here?
The domain of communication in war, the international community is very much aware of what is happening in Cameroon. Let me give examples. We've had the Francophonie in Cameroon. We've had the Commonwealth in Cameroon. We've had the African Union Secretary Moussa Faki in Cameroon. We've had the United Nations Secretary General in Cameroon. The only person I'm sure we've not had in Cameroon, as far as the crisis is concerned, is the Pope. But we've had all those officials that manned international institutions, and all of them talked about the crisis. The crisis is not neglected as far as the political arm is concerned and the economic arm is concerned. It is neglected as far as the humanitarian arm is concerned, because you cannot for sure say that the international community has neglected it from the economic perspective. Now, why would this international community react or focus on the crisis? It's all about the interest and strategic location of the country. And what is the interest and strategic location of Cameroon, that they will focus more on the humanitarian crisis than the political crisis? This is clear with Ukraine, is that Ukraine gives a strategic position for political interests of the West, because it's located beside Russia, and because Russia is an adversary to the rest of the nation and to the rest of the Western state, the rest of NATO. That is why they're focusing on Russia. And now, in terms of Cameroon, they have focused on the political aspect of Cameroon. That's why here they will keep telling you that Cameroon is a sovereign state, and the issue of territoriality come into play. And they tell you that they have spoken with Cameroon government. At the end of the day, is the government. Like if you listen to what Thibault Nagy said, that the government has the upper hand of the conflict. So the government is assuring the international community that this conflict like this, we are able to manage the conflict and we are able to resolve the conflict. So to say that the international community does not get the right information, to me, it's not true, because they get all the information. We have the media in Cameroon. The media in Cameroon The media in Cameroon gives out information. We've had a lot of debate about the Anglophone crisis on my media prime television. You cannot for sure tell me that they don't know. Sibunak also had also been a member who was interviewed on my media prime 90 Million Africa. He gave an inside clue about the conflict. We've also had the Francophonie talk about the conflict. Now, this is what you should know, that except Africans themselves start putting the human interest first than political interest, then the West will buy the international the view of Africans, because Africans are putting more of the economic interest first than the human interest. When Musa Faki came to Cameroon as the chairperson of the AU, what did he do? He said no measures have been taken to ensure that this crisis is contained, and the government is putting in a lot to ensure that the crisis is contained. Musa Faki, who is heading the African Union, should have called for an extraordinary African Union Congress to address the humanitarian crisis in Cameroon. You should also know that some of these NGOs are also fighting for funding and lobbying. So the Norwegian Refugee Council is also an international organization that lobby for funding to carry out their activities. To say that the government, to say that international community has totally neglected the conflict, I say they have neglected from the humanitarian perspective, but from the political perspective, there have been massive engagement from this international community. If you talk about neglect, the U.S. Senate has spoken about it, and they also
giving a vivid picture of what the EU Parliament has
done same. Now, to tell you that they are focused on the political side, the Norwegian refugees are fighting from the humanitarian side, and so we should be careful by stating that the international community has totally neglected the conflict. It's not true. From the political aspect, they have handled it, but from the human interest, aspect, this Norwegian refugee and other right organizations are looking for their financial compensation. We cannot refuse the fact that the humanitarian crisis in the northwest and southwest region is not a call for concern. Of course, it is a call for concern, and now this is why we are calling on Africans themselves, Cameroonians themselves, to know that we should prioritize the human interest side of our country more than the economic side, because if we prioritize the dignity or the dignity of the human person, it is that human person that will go to farm to work. If we respect his personality, the nation will start moving now from a bit of hostility to quietness. And above all, Mr. Kum, one thing we should understand is that the international community as community is fragmented, and people have their interests. What does Cameroon have to offer from the political perspective of it that the international community will focus on the humanitarian arm? Of course, vividly, very little, apart of the Boko Haram, the fact that the U.S. used Cameroon as a transit to fight Boko Haram and terrorism, counter-terrorism issues. So what else do we have as compared to Ukraine that Njong made mention? Ukraine is strategically located, politically located, and economically located for the West. Russia and Russia and Ukraine produce the highest wheat in the world. Russia also produces the highest jet fuel in the world. Ukraine also has production of fuel in the world. So this country now, above all, Russia is an adversary to NATO, and NATO want to clamp down on Russia. So by default, every investment will be done on Russia in Ukraine to portray the humanitarian arm of it, because if you kill 2 women, it's more than making news than killing 50 men. So the humanitarian aspect of it is very clear. That's why they focus on the vulnerability of the Ukrainian civilians. Look at from the mainstream, they talk about the civilians. Russia is slaughtering civilians. You rarely hear that Ukrainian military are being killed. Civilians, Russia is targeting civilians. So if we Africans focus on the humanitarian arm, we will give them the ability to understand that we are respecting ourselves than respecting economy.
Yes, but now almost everybody, you raised the issue that maybe the international community does not have information. But I don't know whether you have read the communiques that are coming out from the European Union, yes. The U.S. Congress.
Yes.
You've seen them.
Yes.
Do they give you the impression that they are not aware of what is happening in Cameroon?
They are aware of some happenings in Cameroon. They are not aware of the complete happenings in Cameroon.
Who was the first to establish what happened in Gabo?
Okay.
It was not from Cameroon, huh?
Yes, let me explain this, please. Now, when we talk about a conflict being neglected, there are 2 things you see in that conflict. One is to ensure that the humanitarian situation is under control. 2 is to ensure that the perpetrators, you start bringing the heavy hand which is needed on them. Let me explain to you. Now, look at the case of Russia. Just yesterday, Joe Biden he approved a bill that, unlike 3 days ago, wherein he said, no, we are not going to supply Ukraine with long-range missiles that could get to Russia. He said, no, we are going to supply Ukraine, but this time around, we will give them what will not go above Ukraine, meaning it should not get into the Russia's territory. Now, what is the meaning of that? You would understand that the rationale, like he puts it, is to give Ukraine that power when they sit on the table to negotiate such that they should see. So there are two things when we talk about conflicts being neglected, is that the attention which is given to bring the perpetrators to order is not there. Yeah, but it is not all about that they don't have information with regards to the conflict. Okay. It is the decision. We keep seeing the sanctions that are given to Russia daily. And so that is what we are talking about. We want to see a situation where the non-state armed groups and their leaders in the West, they are giving sanctions. The government in Cameroon is giving sanctions because of her actions. Now, what I'm saying is, we are talking about how the conflict is neglected.
You say we want to. You want who to?
Now, when I talk about we, now don't forget, please. Now, humans in this case, right? We cannot forget about the fact that Cameroonians have a role to play. If you look at what the Ukrainians are doing to blow the whistle with regards to what is happening, their actors are on the ground, their musicians are on the ground, every single civilian in Ukraine is on the ground to ensure that what Russia is doing, the world needs to know about it, and to bring the Russians to order. So to end, please, what we need to do is that when I talk about we need to bring this, we have a role to play. Whether we like it or not, the way the world is structured, Cameroonians are going to sit to talk about their issues. That notwithstanding, because of the treaties that the government has signed and because of the agreement that the country is part to it, it is obvious that there should be members from within that must be sanctioned in order to bring them to order. Yes. We see the case of Russia where certain persons are targeted. So I think that's the point. Thank you. That's the point.
You don't want him to talk? Russia and Ukraine. We are talking Cameroon. Now, the question is, let's draw inference from Russia. Russia is into a war less than a year. We see the attention, the intervention in Russia, and in Cameroon, people have been dying for about 5 years now. DRC, behind here, people have been dying. I'm sure they have been there for more than 20 years in conflicts. And Burkina Faso also. What should Africa take from this? That we have one international community that is actively involved in a conflict that is in Europe, yet conflicts are happening in Africa, and seemingly nothing is happening.
Thank you, Mr. Liu. Good evening to you.
Welcome back from Mr. J.
Thank you very much. To tell you that there is a very strong fan club of my Media Prime and Prime Mr. J that is watching. I was taken aback when I got to the park, and man, people are watching now. It was like a football match. They're telling me that is Mr. Kum Leonard, Prof, Mark, and Jarvis, and the host of others. So I want to say good evening to the Mr. J. People are watching, most particularly to you, Kum Eric, who is watching, the assistant you, to Gabushi Brian, and the host of others who are watching down there. Now, Mr. Leo, the first thing is I want to say that I haven't gone down to Mr. J and come back. Truth be told, I want to add my voice to that of Senator Regina Mundi that there is a war, there is a crisis in Cameroon. There is a reality. Something is not going on well in this country. Now, talking about Russia, we should be able to say that if you listen to some of the statements that Vladimir Putin has made, he's a big boy. He's waiting for everything that is coming. He says there is something, there is war, come. In Cameroon, who has said that there is war? You want people to intervene in your house when you say all is well? You've not even screamed that you have a problem. There's no problem in Cameroon. Nobody has ever said so. Most of the ministers, even the top personalities will tell you that Cameroon is faring fine. We want to remember, Mr. Liu, that in this country, the Doctors Without Borders were kicked out of the Northwest and the Southwest. The reason is, it was said that they were more of an accomplice to the non-state. Thank you, Jarvis. I want to also remember that Human Rights Watch was accused by the government of giving fake information. Now, when you have people who believe that they don't have a problem, look at the REDAC, for instance. Look at the human rights of Agbobala. They said that there is a war. There is a crisis in Cameroon. Now, when you have people who believe that they don't have a problem, look at the REDAC, for instance. Look at the human rights of Agbobala. They said that there is a war. There is a crisis in Cameroon. Now, when you have people who believe that they don't have a problem, look at the REDAC, for instance. Look at the human rights of Agbobala. These are the same people who come up with information because they gather data, they talk with the people, and there is a reality. Yet, the powers that be will tell you that there is no crisis. So I think that, Mr. Leo, the first thing, that is why when you sent me this topic, I appreciated the angle at which Municipal Update also looked at the story. Okay? Now, there are like, after military rescue, why President Mbah should meet Regina Mundi. Senator Regina Mundi. Now you want to believe that this is a woman. I've listened to my brother Nji Lucas talk. It's very true that we should be able to say that before she was kidnapped, she had already delivered, she has given delivery kit to the Tuba hospital. Now she's taken. She spent 1 month with the people. Mr. Liu, you can be moving freely in Bamenda. But now, once you are taking just for 1 minute, we're talking is that experience of 1 minute that makes us really understand that, okay, I used to move freely, I used to do everything, but there is a reality. The reality is that there is a problem. The first thing I believe is that, Mr. Liu, nobody, your neighbor will not come to your house to ask you what is going on in your house if you don't tell the neighbor, if the neighbor doesn't notice.
Are you sincerely, you think that the international community does not know that there is a war in Cameroon, and then the Secretary General of the United Nations came to Cameroon, La Francophonie came, Patricia Scotland came, and almost everybody is coming.
Mr. Liu, there are.
Why did they come at all?
No, Mr. Liu, there are clear indications. This is my point. There are clear indications. When you look at the number of refugees just in neighboring Nigeria, they have the factors, they have the figures. Yes, they tell you there's a crisis. When you look at the number of deaths, when you look at the number of adoptions, Senator Regina Mundi was adopted. It is reported that Senator Henry Kemende was killed by non-state factors. Oh, yes. And then now you also have the fact that before this, people like Christian Cardinal to me, even Njong from these are people that only they are kidnapped who is enough to tell you something is wrong somewhere. And we have had schools that have been burned down. A school was burned down in Muyoka, in Manfe, and a school was burned down in Kumba that led to the death of children. Now, all these factors tell you there is a problem. But now, where does the problem lie? The problem lies at the level that those who collect the data and present are considered as liars. We know that Human Rights Watch on A was...
but yes, let us assume that Cameroon government presents them as liars. Do you think that the international community is not aware of what is happening?
The international community, Mr. Liu, if somebody tells you that the international community or there is any person in the world who is ignorant of the Anglophone crisis, then it's a lie.
But if they know that there is a problem, like what is happening in Ukraine, they are in Ukraine and are not in Africa, Cameroon precisely. What are they telling Cameroonians?
They are simply telling Cameroonians, like most people had looked at the League of Nations like a toothless bulldog. I think that Prof. Mark Anthony said it all, that are looking at Cameroon more as a farm. You know that from time immemorial, Cameroon and Africa has not been considered as a major thing to reckon with. Cameroon and Africa has always been looked upon as, like he put it, I borrow his words, as a farm. They come there, they cultivate, and once they are done, they go. What they rather do is they want to do everything to ensure that you keep supplying to them. But now, when you look at Ukraine, for instance, Mr. Liu, the war in Ukraine is affecting Cameroon. Because in Cameroon, even in Cameroon, why? Because even in Cameroon, at one time, prices of bread went up because we were told that flour that used to come to Ukraine, there are now problems. It is still there. When it started. Now, Mr. Liu, it tells you now that you may want to ask yourself or ask me, what is it that Cameroon badly gives the European Union or the European countries that even if there is war in Cameroon, they should quickly intervene. So the fact that Cameroon, first of all, is considered as a baby in front of these European countries, Cameroon is not a major factor. That's my first point. The second point, Mr. Liu, is the fact that we have repeatedly, we Cameroonians, those who matter, have always said that there is no crisis. I was taken aback to notice when I went to the Northwest, and precisely, Mr. J, to notice that 7:30, 8 p.m., people are in their houses. This is an area where before I was there, at midnight we are up, at 1 a.m. we are up. But at 8 p.m. you should go in the house. It's a fact. You see even anywhere to even get a chill drink, It's considered a taboo. You must go home. So it tells you already that it is time, Mr. Leo, that we looked ourselves in the faces, just like Senator Regina Mundi said. Let us accept there is a crisis. Maybe by accepting. Because if Human Rights Watch gives figures, and you people say they are lying, Doctor Without Borders too are doing their own job.
Are you saying that some people think there's no crisis in Cameroon?
But till date, there is no crisis in Cameroon.
Then, well, I don't know. Do you buy that?
No. Before when in 2016 they said there was none, but as time went on, they acknowledged that there was a crisis, because even the head of state in his 2018 speech said, acknowledged that there is a.
I will not want some people in Yaoundé to think that I leave people to.
No, even the head of state. Yeah. Even the head of state.
Because if a major national dialogue was organized in Cameroon, it is because the nation has.
Yes. Mr. Leo, maybe what we should make clear is, when I listen to my brother speak.
No. Please,
I'm coming. Let me make my point. My point is that progressively our terminologies are growing. Okay. Progressively. Because I want to remember, we are not calling names here, but till date, what we still have is a kind of, because when you listen to the head of state, when you listen to the head of state talk in front of Mo Ibrahim, it was the impression he gave Mo Ibrahim and the world is his country has a problem. Not a problem is not a war. A problem is not a conflict. Okay? His country has a problem, and he took time to explain the historical aspect of the problem. And he said,
please, I want us to be orderly. I will not want to be tomorrow say that I said that if there is no problem, why was the major national dialogue organized? If there is no war, why is a DDR center created?
Okay.
And why would the President of the Republic say, I'm granting amnesty for those who are carrying arms to drop them? You're dropping arms because you're carrying arms. Is that not enough that there's a conflict?
Okay.
A conflict is not a war. You and I can disagree.
So what's the essence of the DDR?
You know,
the DDR is generally a center that is created to harbor those who are taking up arms against the state. But now, Mr. Leo now, if you want, Mr. Leo now, Mr. Leo now, Mr. Leo now, Mr. Leo, let me just land. Now, when you look at the conditions, Mr. Leo, when you look at the conditions under which a DDR center is created, you start asking yourself, do we meet the conditions?
Okay. If I may pick up from there, I want to begin by saying that we had a Boko Haram situation in Cameroon before the crisis in the northwest and southwest actually came up. That was a crisis which was happening that had arms along with it. We never declared that there was a war in Cameroon. When the situation that came up with the northwest and southwest, where some guys picked up arms, still the reason why they didn't consider it to be a war, because it was like a situation that was happening in part of the country and not everybody was involved in it. And that language kept mounting. But at a particular period of time, it was necessary for us to declare that there was a war. But when the government came up to say, okay, because there was no DDR when the Boko Haram was up. When the government came up and created the DDR, it was like another means of declaring that there is a war without telling them that there is a war. And the intent was to take the arms from those who picked up arms. But like I would say, irrespective of the terminology that whosoever uses, there is a situation that
I'm sure we are going out of. We are discussing something else than today. I know. I want us to come back to the discussion. Our issue is the Anglophone crisis is ranked world's third most neglected crisis.
Good.
Please, can we stay in context, because we have many things that we may want to say.
Very important.
Maybe tomorrow we will have the topic to discuss about that. Let us stay in focus here. Okay. Now, has the world also failed to recognize and take interest in this? Because Thibault Nagy has consistently said that nobody will take you serious if today this person comes up with a problem, tomorrow another person comes up with the same problem, and another, and has asked that people should organize themselves so that they can speak under one voice.
Mr. Leo, yes, I might accept that Africans as a whole, we have a problem with uniting ourselves to stand under a particular umbrella. But it is not an impossibility. And I would say that that particular state of mind in which we find ourselves right now was imparted to us. It was a strategy that had been cooked far long before the colonization of Africans, back in the Berlin Conference.
Okay.
And after that, to create a situation where Africans will fight amongst themselves at every given moment. And when they came up with a so-called idea of independence and gave us, they had already planted a seed of division in us, where it will be difficult for you and I to sit on the same table and speak the same language. We prefer to support somebody who is coming from afar than somebody who is with us. And so that is a situation which they invested in us. And they know it very well that they are the reasons behind that division.
How did they invest in that?
Mr. Leo,
are you saying that when Tumi said there should be an AGC, the international community called Sakura, please don't endorse this?
The international community does not need to call anybody after they have given us education. You see, the education, the educational system that we were given was not an educational system that was meant to bring us together. It was meant to split us apart and permit us to work as individuals for them. And as a result of that, any given moment we are having the opportunity to gather, we will still separate ourselves. So you see, it is possible for us to get to a place where we think that we are the problem. Because I will say this, I am saying that one of African man, a Cameroonian, working together with a Cameroonian is one of the greatest problems we have. We are enemies to ourselves. That I always say. But I will say this, where did that enmity come from? Were we born with it? No, we were not born with enmity. Africans originally, we had a philosophy that guided us together called Ubuntu. We love convivial life. We want to live with one another. But after the invasion of the white man in Africa, the Africans have gotten to a place where they don't know how to work together. So it is an ideology which has generationally been implanted in our spirits, Mr. Leo. It's an ideology. And this ideology
you mean that when you go to the history of your village, I'm sure they'll tell you that your people conquered some people and these people conquered this. Was it after the whites or before the whites?
Mr. Leo, one of the things I will tell you is that
the wars of Kong?
Yes, when it we know all that.
When was it after or before the whites came?
We should not put things out of perspective. When they came conquering, they never subjected the others that you have to speak their languages. If you choose not to stay with them, you were excommunicated. You were sent off. And so when we present it,
was there conflict or not?
There will always be conflict as long as human beings are on earth. Conflicts will always be there. But the problem is we are thinking that it is the Europeans that will come and help us. And I have a problem with that. Because they will never do it, because they know very well that they are the ones who created it. And the reason why they created it, I will still repeat it, is because they want to make Africa a perpetual farm where they will always come back here and they collect. You go to the Congos, people mention the Congos here, which is the first neglected. Congo's situation, how did it start? If you look at it, so from that particular period of time, they came in that they wanted to come and solve the problem. They created more of a problem.
Very briefly, and then
so let us be careful with what we say and what we think. I don't have any problem against a white man, but I will say this: their invention into Africa is the reason why Africa is the way it is, and they will keep on. So if we keep on believing in their solutions, we'll be making a problem. I don't believe in a white man's solution for an African problem.
You are answering the question I asked him, because I asked him that if the international community is in Ukraine and is neglecting Africa, what lessons can Africans learn from it?
Let's build ourselves.
I think for what Professor Mark said, I think one of the thing that we must understand here is that when you identify a problem, it means you have a solution. And we Africans have identified our problem long ago. Then why do we keep blaming the whites that they brought in this education? We have understood that yes, they brought in this education. It has divided, or we understand this. Then why do we still blame them? Because we are greedy. It's greed. Because Mr. Kum, the first thing, let me just be clear. Who tells a minister to embezzle money meant for developmental project? Is it the white man in US?
It's education.
It's not education. It's greed. Who tells you that money meant?
How minister goes to church and the church they say
no. Who tells you that when you are giving COVID money to come and give people, you should not invest? It's greed. We Africans are greedy to ourselves.
They say we should love.
And Mr. Kum, you ask a question: why is it neglected? This is it. If you and a Cameroonian get your brother, put him on social media, on record, you're killing him alive. You put it live on social media, you blow it out. You expect the man in US to respect you, to focus on the human interests of you, of your country? He cannot, because you don't value the human life. Why should he come and fight for that value of that human life that you claim you are fighting for an independence, but you don't value that life, that you claim that he should come and value the life and call for a ceasefire? It's very clear. How many of these countries that you see are not much of a neglect are fighting among each other? We are aware that in conflict things like this must happen, but it is open. Today, this camp, we insult this camp, that you have done this, you have done this, you have collected this. This camp, come and fight this, you have done this, you have done this. And let me ask you, the man from Britain, what do you expect his reaction? He should just come and clap with you that no, it's true, there's a conflict in Cameroon. If Camp A is talking B, is talking Z, Camp D is talking this. So because of the fact that we are fragmented, because of the fact that we Cameroonians, we have decided to break the sacredness of human being, in all honesty, in filming, in cutting, in slaughtering people, I don't want to use those words, but we know them, in kidnapping. And all these things have a role to play why some of this Western world cannot associate. If you got what Bone or Elvis had Tibu Nagy said in his program, Tibu Nagy said that if you think you want the international community to come, you must first of all start by respecting the human lives of your country.
Which of course
and now, let me learn. If they don't, but you yourself, you first as a person hold that obligation. Let me learn. You first as a person hold that obligation, Mr. Lucas. Let me use Moya as an example. If you are in Moya and you value that community, you start by providing community service. The mayor of Boya will not come and value that more than you. And if we value each other, in our own dishonesty, if we say we disagree to agree, it should be the force of argument, not the argument of force. And that is why you see that for these people to focus on this humanitarian crisis, Tibonak, even in his recent outing, said we must come as one voice and speak. That the reason why the Swiss less talk, government is neglecting it. He call it the something like, use a word that is where Cameroon government have a leverage of not to stay committed. But when these guys come in together, the government will be committed.
Let me just come in from where you ended.
Okay.
Giving the reasons why the government neglects it. I want to say that it makes it obvious that
the government are not neglecting.
I'm coming. Come on. Of course. What are you talking about? I think we are not here to satisfy ourselves alone. We are here to educate others so they too should see and understand what is happening. As a matter of fact, we are saying that the Europeans should not get involved in resolving our crisis. That is the bottom line. However, it doesn't give us that leverage to think that we should perpetrate things that are uncalled for because we think that the white man is going to neglect it. Now, this thing is it's obvious. I will still go back to Senator Mundi before I get to where Prof. Mark also ended. Senator Mundi made a very remarkable statement. She made mention of equity and there is war. Please, this would tell you that what she did say, she understands that a child has a plight, the child has a need, and because of the lack of equity, that child was able to get an ideology and a philosophy that was not initially there. And because of this, that child has gone out of hand. And now it has put us into war. And so to solve that problem, we need to first of all begin by accepting that this child has a right. And if you accept that the child has a right, the child is going to handle it. So the whole issue here is the conflict.
Yes, and we discussed all of this.
Yes. So
the topic is international community.
Yes, I'm coming. These are reasons why the community doesn't see the things the way they see it. I will still say it. The international community is not going to set in to solve our problems. I think that one is first. If you go to my status, it's still there. I said that yesterday. Why? It is obvious. We are where they come to farm. So what is most important is that we should not use this
Now,
and
if-
fall on
Let me
others.
stay with you.
Yes.
If the international community, let us say the Europeans are not there,
Yes.
what justifies the silence of the African Union? We understand that Senegalese president
Yes.
is going to be meeting with Putin
Yes.
and Zelensky.
Mr. Liu,
Yes.
I said-
How do we
I said
understand
there
this?
is something, I don't know if I just, there is something I
No.
said.
Yeah. Okay. Now, what justifies the reason that the African Union is not there? This is Macky Sall, the president of Senegal. Today, we get an information. We are getting that he is traveling to meet Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky.
Yes, he met Putin already.
Yes, to solve a problem in their country and to forget about what is happening in Africa. Why? It is because Africans, especially those who decided to negotiate their leadership, these are things we should not throw away.
Okay.
Most African leaders negotiated their leadership positions, and those who give them that power to rule their people, they dictate to them what they need to say. As a matter of fact, I will still go back to say that even the African Union is not the ideal person to solve our problem. Why? We are saying that the African Union has a permanent seat for the Europeans, and Africans do not have a permanent seat in the European Union. So what do you expect? So you will still see that what Professor Mark was saying, that these guys understand what is on the ground. They don't want us to move to that position where you would say that I now have a complete right over myself. It is obvious that you are going to move away from them. The DRC Congo, we all know it. It is said that it harbors 1/3 of the world's natural resources. And it is obvious that it is what we commonly call chop farm. And what do you expect? The people cannot accept that that country should be at peace. We are looking at the case of Cameroon. Look at Glencore. Just yesterday, understanding what is happening in the midst of this crisis, when the conflict escalated, we saw a British company that came in and signed a deal with the government of Cameroon. This is to tell you that they know exactly when to come, and they are the principal reasons why we are fighting. As a matter of fact, if I see two children hitting themselves with a stick, and to solve that problem, because I did see them with a stick, I am going to remove the stick from them. What is happening? We still see the weaponries that they will still sell. They still sign military deals and many more. And we still see some of these guys, they will still keep some of the separatists in their countries. And some of the separatists have a more comfortable position than they used to have within their same country. So you will realize that on the side of the separatists, where they are making it big, they will not want the country to be at peace. And on the side of the government, where they think their interest lies, they will not want it to come to peace. So at the end of the day, we cannot expect these same people to solve our problem. Yes, the fact is that we are the third most neglected crisis in the world. This has come to open our eyes to know that if you are expecting a white man or you are expecting an American, they will not solve our problem. It is time for us Cameroonians, I will still say this, it is time for us Cameroonians to sit together. Yes, we had a major national dialogue.
So you think that the African Union, CEMAC, all of these guys can't help us?
No, they are not ideal. You know why they are not ideal? They are not ideal in solving this crisis because when they come in to discuss about the crisis, a party is listened to and the other party is not listened to. When Musa Faki came to Cameroon, did he grant audience to the separatists? He didn't. Patricia Scottler, did she grant audience to the separatists? They didn't. All of these institutions we are talking about, they have never granted audience to the separatists. And if we are saying that it is a conflict of ideology and you grant audience to a party, are you solving the crisis? You cannot solve it. So because we all know that these people cannot solve it, and even in the major national dialogue, the separatists were not granted audience. Please, we should not misunderstand this. It was said that they have given them amnesty to come. It is different from giving them audience. You need to grant audience. There are people in the diaspora who are calling the shot. If we want to solve the crisis, if we are saying that we have hands that are coming from Europe and the US to fuel this crisis.
You say international community cannot.
Yes.
The African Union cannot. Are you saying that they will fight?
We are not going to fight till thy kingdom come. It is very simple. It is very simple.
We have to rise up.
We have to rise up. And to rise up means that the state needs to look at the separatists and say, okay, yes, this is where we fought at. This is where you are fought at. The country is ours. The white man has an interest. You have your interest. And we have the interest of the country. Where do we fix it? That should be the question. And I think if these questions come on the table, that where do we fix it? We are going to fix it. We must not divide the country to have that kind of life that we think.
What if the separatists say we want, because I'm not sure any of them is ready to accept anything short of separating the country. What happens then?
Let me give you an example, please. Like I said, now, just yesterday, I'll repeat. This is what Joe Biden said, that giving this weapon to Ukraine, it will help them, that when they sit on the table to talk, they will have a better position. All what is happening is some people are struggling to have something to bargain on the table.
So you think that
is what is happening?
You think that there's pretense for independence?
I will say yes, and I could give you. Let me explain to you, Mr. Leo, please, before you give it to Prince. Let me explain to you before you give it to Prince. Now, if you observe elections that are coming up in Cameroon, the separatists will tell the people that, okay, you are not going to vote, and when they hear that an opposition is leading, like we did hear the case in 2018, they went silent. Take note, they went silent. Now, they went silent because...
I was nearly killed that day.
No, when I say they went silent, not that the guns were not there, right? No, I'm coming. Now, this is it, please. Their expectations. Now, they expect that somebody should win the party in place. This is to tell you that they are trying to use something that will give them the leverage to also have a certain degree of power on the table to talk. But they are not interested to divide the country.
Are you saying that the separatists are in good terms with the supposed person who was said to be leading today? You're talking about Professor Maurice Kamto.
Well, we could see that when...
Do they believe in him?
Not necessarily believing in him. Like I said, people have problems, right? And to an extent, if you look at what is happening, there are. I just gave you that as an example. I could give you other examples. There are other examples I could give to you.
I remember that he refused to receive them in Canada, and it was not too good. Yeah, but let's stay in context of what we are discussing. It's true now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Let's look at why has the African Union actually not prioritized these conflicts in Africa, starting from DRC to this one to Burkina? Have they given up? Or is it that they don't have the means? Because maybe they need to rely on the international community to bring the assistance.
The issue is, Mr. Liu, I believe that the African Union is still another baby to a bigger body, which is the European, like Prof. Marx's European body. But there is something I'm still saying, Mr. Liu, the fact that Macky Sall, it would have been easier coming to Cameroon than going to Russia. Yes.
And Ukraine.
Yes, Mr. Liu, that's what I'm saying. It would have been easier. Even with a phone call, he would have called the head of state. Now,
what? Explain this?
No, what we explain is there is something I said here, Mr. Liu, and I'm coming back to that fact. I said that Vladimir Putin, Ukraine is in war. Vladimir Putin is saying it, and he is doing everything possible. But we are still to accept that there is war in Cameroon. Mr. Liu, I know what I'm saying too. Let me give you two simple examples. The first example is Christian Cardinal Tumime, so rest in perfect peace, came up with an idea known as the All Anglophone TED Conference, with the objective to bring together all the different factions. Are you a separatist? Are you a federalist? Are you of the government? Come, let's sit on the table. So that I take these your ideas, I now go tell the government, this is what the people are saying. He is kicked out. It never held. He died a natural death.
Who blasted the ideology?
We could read the handwriting on the wall because, for instance, the mayor of Boya, may soul rest in peace, had said it's over his dead body will such a thing hold.
Did the separatists themselves bless the initiative?
Mr. Leo, the issue here is if the level of Cameroon, if they were given a go-ahead to hold, because if we have had meetings that have held, so many meetings.
Okay, there is a recent one that held in Canada, the CDN. Did everybody endorse it? At least it was out of the country.
No, Mr. Liu, I don't. At times I avoid saying things are held out there, because a majority of those things are held out there are just persons who no longer have the interest of the people at heart, who rather have the interest of their stomach at heart. I followed carefully Christian Cardinal to me all through the Anglophone all conference, and in each press conference he held in Douala, I listened to him. Nobody told me.
Okay.
Now when I listen to him, there is somebody who says, okay, my children are fighting. Come, tell me why you're up. Tell me what is pushing you.
Is that the topic that we are discussing here now?
No, Mr. Liu, we are saying that the European is neglected. Now, when you have a problem and you've not accepted, it's like I'm hungry and I'm saying I'm not hungry.
I'm saying that.
I don't expect somebody to give me
I'm saying
food.
that African, the Europeans are in Ukraine to solve the problem. Our own Papa Macky Sall is also there to solve the problem.
Reason being simple.
How do we understand?
We understand that, Mr. Liu. First of all, I've said something that Africa and Cameroon is considered a farm. I'm still staying in line with Professor Watford.
When Macky Sall, who is an African, is going to solve a problem.
Why? Because you don't have a problem. When you tell him that you don't have a problem, why should he come to Cameroon?
Is there no problem in DRC? Are you saying that DRC told Macky Sall that there was no problem there?
The former director of communications at the African Union, I've forgotten his name, I'm sure those who are watching us can Google, he said, and I quote, that the African Union is a house of friends of presidents. True. And not a house for Africans.
So when presidents say there are no problem, you don't expect them
the reason why he's why
but not only Cameroon. Why is he not going to DRC?
He said it is a house where presidents are instead protecting their colleagues. That is a house where presidents are instead protecting their colleagues than the interests of Africa. And that was why he had to quit the job of the director of communications.
He was correct.
And he also quoted that ECOWAS is a president's club. That these are club than an organization to prevent conflict from happening. And when we look at what is happening, why you ask a rhetorical question, that why is Macky Sall going to Europe than to come to Cameroon, or even DRC, or even in Mali to resolve the conflict? It tells you that these are clubs. This is a club of presidents who sit and decide that, no mind, there's no problem.
That's
just
the issue.
reality.
That's the issue. That's the fact. That's just all.
Just to come in before Macky Sall actually came to take power, who was the president? Was
the man of DRC?
Yes, for it is.
Why didn't he bring the
Did you not even come to Cameroon?
So let me continue. So from what he explained, and he went further in stating that they use the military, the European, as giving the African leaders the idea to understand that as this is a president club, they can give them the military to protect them. That is why the African president comes to power. Instead of investing in the economy, he invests in the military to protect. Go to all of these African countries. How much is based on the defense budget, as opposed to 1, the budget for the youth, 2, budget for development budget,
for education.
3. Now that explains why Macky Sall would take a jet, and this he initially planned it and it was cancelled because the schedule of Putin changed, so it was postponed. Macky Sall would take a jet to Ukraine and to Russia to discuss, whereas his brothers in the northwest and the southwest, also in north of Kivu, are dying and are being killed because they are in a president club. And that is why you see the European Union will be given a permanent seat in African Union. Why? Because they are there to regulate the dispute among friends and tell them that will give this leverage. That is why Israel will want to have an observatory seat in the African Union, because they know that we have to give you military intelligence. How do you explain that Israel has an observatory seat in the African Union? Now, how do you explain that Musa Faki will come to Cameroon and see what is happening, and African Union has not called for an extraordinary Congress to handle conflict in Africa, not even Cameroon?
Because it is from there that they cannot project to the world.
Let's not even go to Cameroon. Let's not even limit it to Cameroon. An extra African Union Congress should discuss Boko Haram crisis in the Congo Basin. to discuss the conflict we have in Niger. Musa Faki is from Niger. And there was you saw what happened with Inno.
Yes.
Inno.
Yes.
Musa Faki, an unconstitutional act in your but not even a statement. Now it tells you that the African Union is a president club. Now the question is, where do we go from here? Where do we go from here comes from what I say the Imago Dei. Our brothers in the northwest and southwest regions to understand that we are created in the image and in the likeness of God. In Mr. Lucas, I see myself. In Prof, I see myself. With this, I should respect the dignity of the human person. And if I begin by respecting the dignity of the human person, it reduces the level of dependency from the Western world. And if you are watching us today and you become president of Cameroon tomorrow, please take Cameroon as a nation of the people and not a nation of the president club that we have in African Union. Because the African Union is more of a president club where people come together, but no mind this thing of the Northwest, no mind Nigeria, mind this. Yes. That is why you see Sal has nothing to do with Africa.
You don't expect
people are dying in Nigeria. People are dying in Mali. Has a conflict now. The conflict in Mali, the ECOWAS have sanctioned Mali. ECOWAS have sanctioned Mali, but Mali is still trading with also Burkina Faso, and is trading with Senegal. The same Senegal that is part of the sanction that have sanctioned Mali. To tell you that there's an issue of interest, and the reason also why we face this challenge is because we Africans, Cameroonians, we are so wicked and greedy, and that we use the white man leverage on the fact that it's a white man education to disturbing us to hide under. We use it to hide under our wickedness. How do you explain the fact that people are dying every day in the northwest and in the southwest region? People are indifferent to the killings. And how do you explain you get a brother from the same region, even if you disagree with him in ideology, you kill him and you market it on social media, and you have somebody who is struggling to bring peace in the region, you kidnap that person and you ask for ransom? How do you explain that somebody who is struggling to bring education in an area where they say there should be no school, you caption that person a terrorist supporter because that person is struggling to bring education in your locality, risking his resources, his life to provide education? How do you explain those things? Because so it tells you that we are wicked to ourselves, and we must take that commitment today as Cameroonians, that wherever we go, we preach peace, we preach tolerance. I always say that, and people will hate it. President Mbah may be who he is, but there's one thing I admire: tolerance. That tolerance that we don't have. If some of us are President Mbah today, you look at somebody on the TV and say, go and kill that person. Because if you hear what is coming out from some of us our mouth, if we can imagine that we are here and see people criticize us just a bit on social media, we go so mad.
Get angry.
Like if we catch this person, we'll kill. And you see what people every day on media, social media, newspapers talk about President Mbah, yet he still observes and tells you that if we let them speak. And again, we are not saying there's 100% freedom after speech, but what we are saying is that we must have that certain degree of tolerance, that we must always disagree to agree respectfully in the common law system. And that is why you see this conflict is negated. If we wait for African Union, my dear brothers and sisters, African Union is a president club. Whoever becomes president will go to that club and renew his membership, that it should be maintained there. And that's why you see the military alliance will always support them. Until then, we are doomed.
Okay. Until then, we are doomed. I hope what you're going to say has to do
it's still linked with him to talk about the fact that when we talk of a presidential club, the issue is we would have long solved the crisis. Mr. Liu, Prime R is one of those programs that has dealt on this same topic. We've discussed it until, and if at all, what we say, some quarters that be and the powers that be here, maybe we'll not be talking the crisis again. Because when you have a problem and you have noticed that the person out there will not come in to solve your problem, even some of the persons who hold opinion that are maybe say not 100% with the government will often say that the Cameroon problem can be solved by Cameroonians. But how do we solve our problem? I keep saying this is, first of all, admitting a problem. When you admit a problem, now you look at each other in the face on a dialogue table and say, okay, this is what we should do, this is what we should do. But if you want to discuss your problem, Mr. Leo, and before you already discuss it, you say this is a no-go area. Come here, but don't talk about federalism. Come here, don't talk about separation, then there is a problem. Okay. The only thing we can discuss here is decentralization is wrong. Give people the freedom to talk. I believe that one of the countries in Africa and the world that are enjoying, to a certain extent, freedom of the press, Cameroon is amongst them. Because there are topics where people come up, discuss freely. Whereas in other areas, if you say some of those things, you could be weak and you become history. And that is why at times you move even on the road and someone sees you and says, is this all about you? I was thinking you're fatter and you're things like that. Because when I listen to you, I just believe that, Mr. Leo, the Cameroon and the Anglophone crisis can be solved by Cameroon. Okay. Which will begin by admitting, just like the senator did, there is a war. Have we accepted there is a war? Have we accepted that when you go to small communities, that you stay maybe in Douala and you get a bottle of a juice for 500 francs and you go to a village and you buy it for 1,000 francs? It tells you there is a problem. That the fare you used to pay for, say, 3,000 francs or 500 francs from, say, Bamenda to Bali, you now pay 2,000. It's not because fuel prices have increased. That is just the normal economic factors, not even the killings. Because if we want to go to the killings speak volumes. They have killed enough. Internally displaced persons also speak volumes. The number of schools also speak volumes, and the adoptions speak volumes. If we look at the economic stagnation that Cameroon has been going through for a while now, Mr. Liu, it is enough for us to admit, first of all, we have a problem. Now, when we have a problem, what do we do to come out of it? That should be the next thing we should be looking at, because the major and the main reason why the dialogue or the major national dialogue held was to come out of the carnage, the adoptions, and the killings. But if till today we still have some of these things, then we should be able to understand that maybe the strategy that was used during the dialogue wasn't successful. What then do? We now rethink of sitting and looking each other in the face and say, okay, this is what a dialogue looks like. If you want to dialogue with somebody, even if the person is as wild as what, let the person sit with you. Okay, please,
please. Let's get back to the topic. We are already late. We move to our next topic for tonight, which has to do with discussing why conflict experts have not been used extensively to solve this problem. We are in a conflict for more than 5 years now in Cameroon. Have you seen those who are experts in conflict resolution extensively used?
I don't know if it's a rhetorical question or a question that we actually need to answer. But since we are in a debate program, I think it's a question to truly answer. But you see, it is funny how for about close to 6 years today, we have conflict resolutors, let me use that word, in Africa, precisely in Cameroon. We can call names, and shockingly, they have not been convened by the government to actually even make proposals. It is true that instead of that, we came up with a program called, in fact, a particular gathering called the National Dialogue, through which every individual had the right to share their ideas, even though there were pre-mentioned ideas, and everybody had to speak in a particular way. But that didn't actually go closer to convening these particular individuals we are calling conflict resolutors, if we have some. We can mention people who have studied international relations, who have the capacity to deal with problems, who are in Cameroon, who has gone out of this country and dealt with issues. For example, even in Douala here we have Barrister Tumfo Nikohale, who has handled situations in other countries. We have Willibrod Zingwa, Prof, yes, Professor Zingwa, who has the capacity to handle this issue, but he has not been called. I remember the last time I saw his name.
A commission was even created, Mr.
Just can I finish?
History, which we don't know
I
what
saw
has
a
become
name.
of the commission.
I saw a list of names which actually feature his name, but that list was for individuals who were supposed to write the history of Cameroon, as if the history of Cameroon had not been written though. It is shocking that we have been going through this crisis for these years. Okay, if we cannot respect or even give honor to us, why not invite those from outside?
Experts in the domain.
Experts in the domain. Mm-hmm. We have seen none that has been invited. But in the midst of all this, we still believe that the problem can be handled within the nation. Why I say so is because I have been looking at the crisis evolve from one stage to the other. And what I think that has been the fuel behind it has been rhetoric.
Sure.
It has been what some have said that has fueled it. And I believe that if we logically and strategically pull out some of those rhetorics, we will be able to amend the situation. And it is not still too late to invite these experts to use their savvy in handling this problem.
Okay.
Sincerely.
Okay. Let us get this straight. Do we not have experts in the domain of conflict resolution in Cameroon? Don't we have historians to tell the problem as it is? Because we have not heard much from those who know Cameroon's history. They are not the ones who have been talking about this issue. Are they lacking?
We have this category of persons in Cameroon. I think it's the lack of political will to make use of them. There's no political will. If we accept this and decide to adopt or to bring in these people, then we will solve this crisis. The historians have said all what the people needed to know, and now the people know exactly what is on the table.
Where did they say it? I've not seen historians brought on TV platforms to explain the history. They have said it in the amphitheaters.
Yes.
Yes.
Some have said it on interviews. I remember that prior to the 20th of May, Professor Victor Julius Njong.
I brought him here.
Okay, brought him to.
I brought him here. Yeah, but it is under pressure. But for the past 5 years.
But I listened to him recently before, I think on Sunday on Cameroon Calling. He spoke lengthily.
Let me say.
Yes. So I was saying that historians have spoken. I will still repeat that. And we do not need the kind of historian you may be thinking. I think the conflict in the northwest and southwest of this country makes it very clear. Everybody knows exactly why the people are fighting. We are not saying that in 2016 the people got up and picked up arms and went into the street. The people were taken off the street with the guns, and they went to the bush, and arm was given to them by bush doctors, I'll put it that way. That's it. So yes, guns were given to them, yes, from the bush by the bush doctors. And what is interesting is that the same people who are fighting today, who are leading these people, they know the history of the country. And they too have decided to distort, because they want that their narrative should be what those who have the guns in the bush should follow. And it is a reason why those who think that they should take to the TV, they should take to the newspaper, they should take to their different communities, they should take to the radio to tell the people about the truth, they should be allowed also to say the truth. Firstly, the history of Cameroon is in books. But what is unfortunate is that some of the things that were said by Professor Ngo, whom I did listen to, watched that particular episode on Prime Hour, some of the things he said, you would not see them in some of the history books. He kept on making statements such as, go to the archives, you will see that. That is because some of these documents are still in the archives. And the people need to understand that not everybody has access to the archives. If we were to know our history, get this please, if we were to know our history, yes, no, I'm coming.
Why not bring
no, like I said, he has spoken, please. Now, like I said, he has spoken, right? And he says that some of these documents, you have them in the archives. Now, under normal circumstances, the history of a country is taught in schools. It should be written in books. For example, like I said, it's all about political will, please. It's all about political will. For example, in America, if you want to do engineering, you have two things that they'll be teaching you. Engineering and the American history. They'll teach you the American War of Independence and they'll teach you the world history. This is because they believe that every American should know exactly what happened, be it good or bad, where the government had strength and where the government fell short. What is sad is that we want that a particular story be told to the people. So this is where I may not blame some of the people we may want to think they are gullible, because the information that they need, nobody is bringing it to them. So we have to allow these people. So when the will fall into the people, like Jarvis said a while ago, that it is time for us to look at somebody and say, I see God in you. To allow the people, yes, to allow the people say the things the way they are. We have conflict experts in this country. We have persons who have been on special mission. Barrister Agbo Bala was on a special mission while he was working with the UN somewhere where there was conflict. And he was consulted, he was sent to that end by the UN, to be precise, in Bahrain, because...
He was in Afghanistan.
And he was also in Afghanistan.
He was in Afghanistan and DRC.
Good, because he has an expertise. So we should be able... it is lack of political will. I think the whole point here is lack of political will. Another factor is that, Mr. Leo, most of those who tell the people that they need to stop carrying arms are the same people that those who carry these arms do not want to listen to. And in solving conflict, you need to take into consideration the party that are aggrieved. You need to understand that if the belligerent does not want this particular person, he or she should not be the person that you have to bring to speak to the people. Because you escalate that and you will make the people to be more aggrieved with that particular person. So the long and short is that the lack of political will to make good use of the conflict resolution expert in Cameroon, and the lack of political will and the fear of being reprimanded when you say the truth is causing some of the historians not to speak. Why? The lack of political will to listen to these people who can resolve this crisis is giving us this stalemate.
I think I want to disagree a bit with my brother G. If he is here on the panel, is not because he was given a political will. This part of education is given to the people and to the state and to authorities that be. If so Prince is here, it's not because of political will, but it's because Prince is patriotic and he sees the need of contributing his own quota, and maybe what he will say here, or what Mr. G or whoever says here, will help somebody to either drop the arms or stop the violence or stop the hostility or prick the mind of those in authority to understand that we must do something.
Conflict resolution, please, permit me.
No, the topic is why conflict resolution experts and historians have been given a role in Cameroon. Have not been given a role.
Good.
Should be have
you
not
understand?
Been given a role in Cameroon.
You understand?
Now
I have said it correctly.
I'm coming. I'm not landing.
A resolution expert is sought.
Please, I beg. You guys should calm down. I am the moderator here. Let me moderate. We have more than 100 historians in Cameroon, I'm sure.
Yeah.
We have so many conflict resolution experts in Cameroon.
Yeah.
Now, the stories that are told out there are told by activists and politicians, right? Historians differ because now what you have done today, you are citing Prof. Songo. I would have loved that you cite the other persons that you think. Yes.
And I was just coming.
Please, I don't want people to sit in the house that we came to discuss them. No, the problem, please. Now, why can the government or whosoever not bring the historians across the board to tell the story as it is? That is I think my worry here. Because if we say Cameroonians know the story in books, those are history students. How do we get talking now? Let me
continue. Dr. John Gwanemu, I respect so much, said in one of his documentaries that until the lion produced its own historian, the story of the hunt will always be told to glorify the hunter. Okay. And that is what we experience in Anglophone crisis, as you mentioned. The story of the hunt is now being told to glorify the hunter. The reason why we have this situation is because historians themselves are not making efforts to show valuable contributions to this conflict. For example, you are a journalist, Prince. When you ask historians that you want to have them on their panel to educate the masses, they will not be available. Sure. Let's be very clear. You will make effort, they will not be available. But who are those that will be available? Are those who are from the civil society, who probably don't know the historical deontology of Cameroon. They will be available to talk on the panel. And now, the same thing with conflict resolution. If you call those negotiators or conflict experts to come on this panel, you have a hell of 2 months or 7 months or not even have them on panel. But who are those that will even manage to come? Are those who have very little idea about this conflict. And do you blame these people who come and talk on panel? Of course not, because the conflict resolution experts themselves are not making themselves available for the masses. Remember, there's something that we must understand here. These persons are going after money, not after the will of the people. I will say it with all honesty, because there are 3 things when you come on the panel. You touch the common man, you touch those that are really affected, you de-escalate them, and also you preach authorities to take certain measures. Whether we like it or not, there are some things that are being said on the media that the government see reasons to adjust. Not because they could not do it before, but because the media, somebody stood on the media and said something that touched them. So these experts are not making use of the media, and you will rarely see that. I throw a challenge. How many of these experts, when you watch on the national TV, when you watch on all the media organs, Prince, when you watch on all the media organs in Cameroon, look every day, how many of those that will come and have an intellectual discussion? If you imagine, there was a program I wanted to do. I gave an invitation for one of the historians that they said he had a contrary view, and another one they said he had the contrary view. Let us come and discuss and see where we are lacking and educate the common man. None of them showed up. Now, who are those that will come? Politicians who are coming to say their political idea. And how do you get now the real issue? How do you expect them to be on the table? Because they expect that the government should come and give them money. Everybody expects that the government must give them money before they talk. I throw this challenge, and if you are watching me, if you have any historian, tell the historian, contact my media prime, they will receive you. And how many will come? None. Mr. Leo.
Okay, this is it. My Chavis, please. Mr. Leo, please. Now, this is it. When I talked about lack of political will, please, thank you. What we need to note, yes, what we need to note is that most of these people you are talking about they are employees, and these employees are being employed by some top political parties, and in some cases, the state. When I talk about lack of political will, please, these people know exactly that there are times when you go there to say the things that you have to say, a lot of things will be at stake. And where is the political will lacking? That person who calls the shot, that your boss, if he says, okay, you are comfortable to go, you will go. I want you to know that they may not have that courage to tell you, but when you call them, when you invite them, they look at the topic, the discourse from within, they belong to certain political parties.
They are afraid to be attacked.
Good, yes, you get it. So that's clear. So if that political will was there to permit them,
sometimes wrote that.
Excuse me. And at the beginning of this crisis, Mr. Lo, let me just lie. At the beginning of this crisis, I could vividly recall. I could vividly recall that on a certain media platform, thank you, on a certain media platform, at the beginning of this crisis in 2017, I think one certain Christian said conflict, he is a conflict resolution expert. He said there are 5 stages of conflict. At the beginning of this crisis, if we go online, you'll get this. He said we are at the 3rd stage. And before the guys could pick up arms, he said these are things that will unfold if these things are not put in place. So the point is, we may not have, please, we may not have, if the channel is permitted, it will be good, so we get it right. We may not have those who have such courage. But what is very clear is that the political will for people who have certain ideas to solve certain problems. Your topic says, why are they not? Bear in mind that they ought to be consulted by 2 parties. In this case, a conflict resolution expert, you go for his skills. There are Cameroonians who are working with the UN. They are working in special mission in these countries to solve problems in other countries. Please, they should come. They should come based on permission. And like I said, the lack of political will. First of all,
monopolizing this debate today now.
No, it's okay. It's not about the political will. Yes, it's about the will. Once the politicians in place doesn't have that will to permit them, they cannot come. Thank you.
You draw a reactor before coming. Okay. Yes. But how do we explain the fact that these guys have not been used? Is it that they are not existing, or they are not also disposed, or the fact that it is also juicy? Some persons who hold political and administrative positions, I think that if this opportunity is given to the experts, they may lose out of some benefits.
Yeah, Mr. Liu, I think that the first thing is, if you go down there and ask maybe a common man that what is an Anglophone crisis, at time you're taking it back to hear people tell you roads, we not get road for village here, water not there, light not there. That is where historians would have come in to tell the history. Recently, today is the 2nd of June. I think we are just 12 days after we celebrated the 20th of May. And every person was 50 years anniversary. Now, you want to ask somebody, what is the 20th of May? I saw there are children in Opasi who don't know what's the 20th of May. Yes. Now, what you ask children, even in Form 5, what is the 11th of February? I was going to March. What are you going to March? They don't know. Now, the issue is, we have persons in Cameroon who are grounded, who can tell you this history. There are people who even took part. Some who took part in the plebiscite of the 11th of February, who are still living, who are not telling you that the history said that, this man said that. They are telling you, because Jarvis can authoritatively, if you want to talk about maybe the media coverage of the 2018 elections, Jarvis is a living witness because he tasted how the media goes so far as...
I nearly died that day.
You and I were together, Mr. Liu. Now, the issue is,
no,
at times...
You were not in Boya. I was in Boya.
Oh, no, I'm rather talking about the one at right here in Bonaberi.
Okay.
Now, what I'm saying here, Mr. Liu, is, I'm talking about the fact that at times, people have the know-how. But now, what is the issue? Mr. Liu, if I tell you persons, at times even family members, who call you and tell you, you are still young. Some of these things you say. The reason is, some of these persons who are big guns, that is why I talked about tying a bit with what Mr. G. Lucas was saying. In one way or the other, are affiliated somewhere. Affiliated here, Mr. Liu, I mean is, there are people that you just see, but you don't know they are big contractors. There are people you just see, but you don't know they are into different businesses that need certain things. And at a certain time, you want to avoid...
Should I recue you to the question?
Your question is, why are historians not showing?
No, yeah, to you particularly, I said that. Are they not being used because maybe some administrators...
But that's what I'm saying.
They don't want to give them opportunities because they will cease... chop from their mouth.
That's the same thing I'm saying. I'm saying here, Mr. Liu, that there are people, without calling names, I know of a historian whom on the 20th of May was invited on the grandstand to talk to the people and explain what is the history of 20 May, the man gave certain facts that the divisional officer considered those facts too hard for the children. Now, what we are saying here is the people know the facts. The facts are glaring. But now, having the courage to come say it is where the bone of contention is. And at times, Mr. Leo, we could be saying that, okay, you invite these people, they not come. At times, they don't come because the reason is they have one way or the other where they say, okay, when I come and I touch this point, it may act as an eye-opener to somebody. And once I expose this thing, it creates problem for the people. And that is why I think that, Mr. Leo, it is time. It is time those who really master this history, because at times you'll be shocked to hear some of our historians rather granting interviews to foreign channels.
Of course.
I once listened to Professor Vinka Fanso, I'm sure something like, yes, on a foreign channel, where he took time to explain the plebiscite. He said on that young day, he was still a young guy in the primary school, they took them to go and vote and things like that. Now, in Cameroon, I was even expecting that on the 20th of May, there should be a week of a program. But what I was hearing is Vivam Sam. This person has lived in the north, has been preparing Achu. Even the fact that he said, I don't know what Vivams, I don't understand it. That he has been in the northwest from the northwest. That is the kind of things we do here. So the issue is, they will tell you, this person left Bali, has been living in the far north for close to 30 years, he's preparing Achu. He's still showing that no matter the differences, I don't understand me how historical what they were doing is. The truth is, we still have those who can speak. But they are in one way or the other tied somewhere. And you will not want that the small contract you have picked for maybe say 5 million, 10 million is withdrawn the next day because you came. Because you went on a TV channel like My Media Prime and said no, on the 20th of May, it was the 20th of May 1972, there was a referendum, there was this. They don't want to expose themselves. Mr. Liu, like Javi said, I've had the same experience.
Yep.
There are persons who are well informed. You hold them on phone and they tell you, Prince, I would have loved to, but let's just leave it.
On the 20th of May, we had Prof. Songo live.
Thank God.
Explain certain things, because whether we like it or not, there are some stories that are being peddled out there that are lies. We may think that we are grounded in history, but when historians talk, when you have Gentle here explain certain things, he's a history teacher. You have Ndifo Richard. When you listen to them explain those things, you discover that I myself, it's a lot I learn, especially when they are here. So we cannot pretend that we know these things to our fingertips. Why can we not take a week, 2, or a month?
That's what we are saying.
A month. Get those guys, float all the TV channels, explain these things to Cameroonians, because those who know Cameroon history and most of others are those who are history students in class. But also there is the problem of having those guys on TV tell the history, because they will tell you that they are going to be taxed either by Mbah or the government for supporting. But some of us have been tagged for years. It means our lives valueless.
Mr. Leo,
no, politically weak from the individuals.
Mr. Leo, it is funny.
Are you talking here because
should I talk?
Go on.
I thought you were talking. Okay. One of the things I will say, and I will say it without mincing words, is that truth has the capacity of liberating people. When a people get to know the truth, they can become rebels to the system.
That's it. That's just a fact.
And so, most at times, the history of a nation is actually scrutinized and kind of, should I use the word? It is.
You're correct.
The word. They make sure that they select what should go out to the people and what should remain in the archives. And that is why, at times, when you call a history teacher or a historian, he will find it difficult because he knows that some of the things that he has been conditioned to might be present to the students has a problem. Some of them have the opportunity to come and say the truth, because I think that as long as I know the truth, I will say it, irrespective of what is going to come after that. Let's speak the truth. The truth has that liberating force. But like I said, when you speak truth and the people get truth, truth has that ability to turn you to become a rebel according to the system. Why? Because the moment you see error in the system and you speak against it, you are a rebel against the system. And so that is what some of the government officials are afraid of. And if you hear me, you remember of recent, there is a list of historians that were selected to write the history. They did not say rewrite, because I know some of us said, because it was written in French, rédiger, we thought it means rewrite, but it simply means write the history of Cameroon. And so some of us ask this question: had the history of Cameroon not been written before? In this case, there is something that needs to be passed to the people through that particular committee of historians that were selected. And why is history, the history of a nation, supposed to be written by the government, or is it supposed to be written by individuals? Or is it supposed to be written by historians who actually understand the history? I don't think the history of a nation is a responsibility of the government. The government should not write, because the government will select what should be written.
Definitely.
And if the government has interest in writing, it is because it wants to shape the minds of the people towards a particular goal. And if that is the case, it implies that it is doing everything possible to hide certain things from certain individuals. So, Mr. Leo, coming back to talk about why most of these guys will not come to your platform is because, like they said, they will be targeted. It is not a lie that they said they will be targeted. And so it is very important for them to protect their lives. If somebody feels threatened, I don't see any reason why the person should not protect his or herself.
When Richard
is talking over the TV. He's in US. He's not in Cameroon.
No,
and so
spoke most of the time from Boya.
And most of the times
he lives in Boya.
It is not a problem if he speaks.
Gentle is in Boya.
Mr. Leo, even the history that Gentle will speak is not the history that Prof will come and present here.
Yeah, but he also lives in Boya.
So, unfortunately for you, or say fortunately for you, I mean, Professor Ngo finally came to your platform, but that is supposed to be something he was supposed to be doing daily. But if he could not come continuously to your platform, it also means something. So you should. So there are a lot of professors and doctors that as historians.
I'm saying that as a history lecturer, you are there to clarify the nation in times of darkness, like now. You understand? Let me come. If you are a historian and at the time the nation needs that history most, you cannot serve the nation, what then is your true value? And if you are an conflict expert, you live in a nation for 30 years, there is no conflict, and at the time there is conflict, you are not made use of, what then is your essence?
A conflict expert, please. A conflict expert, I'll begin with that, is called to solve a problem when there is a conflict. A conflict expert, no matter what he says, be it on TV or on radio, it will not change anything once that political will is not there. That's what we need to know. The historians, for example, I'll take the case of Walter Rooney when he wrote the book, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. Before Walter Rooney died, at a certain point in time, he himself tried to distort the history as a historiographer because he saw the impact which what he wrote created. Coming back to tie with what Prof. Mark Anthony was saying. Prince said there was a certain 20th May where a certain historian presented certain facts and the divisional officer did not want that. Because he feels that enculturation, indoctrination is taking place. For example, on your platform, Professor Ngo said something quite remarkable that, please, that a lot of people have been saying that there were no two ballots. It was just we and yes. He said there was a black ballot. He clarified that. Don't you see that was good?
Prof,
yes.
Ngole also said that.
Yes, you get it. Yes. That was clarified. Now, for over these years, for over some time now, a lot of people have been saying that it was simply we and yes. Whereas it wasn't so. So what we are saying is that when these things come up, from the day he said there was this other version, the situation changed. And the people have lived with this for over 50 years, believing that there was no other version of that particular document, whereas it was. So the will for these people to speak the facts and the truth, bearing in mind that we are talking about a people whose employer is the government.
Yes, but my problem is the government. Please.
Yes.
Please. My problem is that why can the government not make use of if you have conflict resolution experts that you may have trained in your country, you have historians that you have trained, and you find yourself in problems. Why not make use of them? That is my question.
Good. This is where we are saying that they need to accept that these people should be at their disposal to solve our problem. It goes back to answer this. They are either being greedy, not willing to change the status quo, or they have decided that we should stay with the stalemate because they are making profit. Because you cannot train a child and the child is of age. The Bible says, for example, that children are there to serve as support sticks for their parents when they grow old. And we have trained conflict resolution experts. Some of these guys, the government sponsored them to study abroad. And today they are, rather than making use of these people, they are dormant.
It's more of a...
So it's all about political will.
Please, I'm glad to note that Professor Victor Julius Ngo is watching the program, and he says that, good evening, sir. The problem is also because most Cameroonians are afraid to accept the truth. Once the truth goes contrary to what they want to believe, the historian is called all sorts of names. We are aware of names and threats leveled at some historians. Secondly, some historians stay out of the main centers of active TV and press media, and getting them there at the scheduled time because scheduled time becomes difficult due to logistics. But 5 years at least. But we appreciate Professor Victor Julius Ngo, because anytime I've moved to if I cannot get him here, he tells me to come over to Boya, and he grants the interview. Yeah.
I think we have warnomics, like an economics, the warnomics of it, where you see where those officials who ought to use these historians, we spend a lot of things that on things that are not relevant, and instead of spending on things that are relevant, like making logistical resources for conflict experts or historians to tell the history of the nation as it is, we don't want to, because we feel like if they do, maybe where we used to get our money will not come, and also people will now, instead, who have been glorifying us like their savior when we come from home for homecoming like ministers, they will not glorify us again, and so we are afraid to give them this position. And so that is why you see, again, I go back to what Dr. George Ngwane said, that until the lion produces its own historians, the story of the hunt will always be told to glorify the hunter. And in this domain, we have to be very, very clear that in as much as the government is not investing on the historians themselves to do, our conflict resolution expert to do this, these historians too, on the other hand, have a duty to play. And that duty is because if Cameroon is burning, if Northwest and Southwest region, we don't have adequate security, they will not be able to perform their historian services. They will not be able to perform their negotiation or their conflict resolution expert, because you can only give a historical analysis in a peaceful environment. So we have a nation to build, and that nation to build is that we must, once in a while, if we cannot talk, we can do write-up. We can do write-up, because I learned a lot from Professor Ngo when he had the first program with you in Boya, when he talked about the detail about Ndeli Foncha, and I actually watched that tape over and over again, and prompted me to have a program with Professor Ngo, whom he also clarified some certain things about the myth that we had, like the yes and we ballot. before that program, I knew that we just had a yes and we. But after that program, I knew that there was a yes and a no ballot. That the no ballot was black ballot, and which was in some of the police stations, though not in majority of the police station because of political will. So I understood that there was now a yes and no, contrary to what even it's on social media where people are telling you that it is a we and yes. And if you go down to some of the people in the bushes, they will still tell you that we are fighting because there was no yes and no. So I think that historians there are three people in this conflict. I'm talking under the cover of a negotiator. There are three people in this conflict. We have the state-armed actors, the non-state actors. We have people who are affected by the decision of the state actors and the non-state actors. And historians and conflict resolution experts coming on the table, they will help to address the concern of the third party, which is the people who are affected by the activities of either A or B. We need to get that history and continuous education on how to resolve conflict and on how Cameroon from 1880 to present will help us. I think that people also can get the book Cameroon Cameroon from 1800 to present, a recent book from Professor Ngo, which I also read. Then I noticed the dialogue between Ndeli and Foncha, and that helped me a lot. So I think that if historians cannot come on the panel, they should do what we call article. They should write article and give to journalists.
Okay, Professor Victor Julius Ngo says, why can't the National Assembly or Senate invite these historians to discuss, for instance, the Anglophone crisis and get the print and TV stations to cover it live? That is exactly what we are talking about. The entire nation follows.
Political
yes.
Mr. Leo, to tie with him, I want to tie with him. To say that one of those parliamentarians, who ran the country used to be a history teacher. I'm talking about Weber here.
Yeah.
Now, he used to be a history teacher before he joined the National Assembly. Now, I think that there is something I'd said here to tie with what Mr. Njiluka said. It is political reasons. We should not forget that the present head of state, alongside Madame Dorothy Limunganjuma, or Professor, were amongst those Ayijo had dispatched. Go and see what is happening. The Haro Committee, thank you for the word, go. Which means, and I also said that when I sat, at times something can be happening and you feel that somebody is not aware.
Yeah.
When I sat and I listened to the head of state answer Mo Ibrahim, I told myself, the head of state knows the problem. So now, Mr. Leo, the only problem we have now is the political will. At times, you want to remember that even in the days of the monarchs, there are certain topics that were considered eye-openers, that the monarchs killed those subjects. James II did it. There are certain topics that they come for inside in his history, say, strike this off, strike this off, strike this off. And I'm still saying that, Mr. Leo, even till today. I know of teachers who were either taken out from even state universities, because even as history teachers, at one time, certain persons felt that they were rather telling a too hard history, which is still history. I know of a history teacher in the South region, which was on the news, who was removed because he asked a question that his HOD considered that was very difficult. I'm sure you know of that. And that is why I think, Mr. Leo, and that is why I think that if there is a political will, because even I thank Prof for reacting promptly, because others will see like that and rather take you or call you rather after the program. But he comes in promptly to say that this is a situation. Imagine, Mr. Leo, that on the 19th of May, I was invited by the DO's office in Susa to come and talk to the children. I was there, the commandant, the things he had to do with the commandant and the commissioner. I spoke to them. They said, okay, what do you know about the 20th May? I think that, Mr. Liu, imagine that on a 19th, before the 20th of May, we are told that there will be a special program, maybe on my Media Prime, where 6 historians are taking some over, because I'm saying this. I've had to argue this issue with some of our brothers of French instruction, who say that si les anglophones disent qu'ils ont un problème, moi aussi, je viens du Kribi, j'ai aussi le problème. It means that People, first of all, have a problem of understanding who is an Anglophone. When you have people who think that an Anglophone should be considered to a Kribi, to a far north, to somebody from the Bafia, there is a problem. It means I will first of all have an issue because I discovered something. I'm not minimizing another person's education. What we do as Cameroon, Africa, and world history, and the French system is reduced as l'histoire jour and even ACM. It means that to a certain extent, what you may spend close to a whole term learning,
that's for history.
Reduced to somebody for
that's for history students. Please let me just take a few. Let me take some messages. I've really not read messages today now.
It's okay, President.
Do you people permit me?
President.
Okay. I know you are itchy to talk. Good evening, Mr. Liu. Your panelists are really hitting the debate topic very well. I am enjoying the program. Sumbele Kelvin writing from Kongsamba. Good evening, Mr. Liu. Our government officials are behind the negligence of this crisis because of international community understands the gravity of the crisis, then they will intervene and the truth of the matter will come to the limelight. Historical greetings to all the televiewers in Tole and to Mr. Tangi Ernest Tango, the fan club president of Tole. I'm glad to note that Tole has organized itself. They have a very strong fan club, and also greetings to the fan club president, Mr. Willie, out there in Bomenda. Good evening, Mr. Liu and our panelists. Why are we fighting over spilled milk? The Anglophone problem is simply neglected by the international community because of some major reasons. First, the creation of the UN and other affiliated associations came in when most African countries did have independence. This therefore tells us that African problems are considered as second-class problems in the world. The second point is that African territories were discovered, partitioned, and named by the Europeans, who today are the forerunners of the chaos in Africa. So they are helping some of our shadow institutions in Africa who can't stand up for Africa because they are sponsored by the West. So we should learn to solve our problems by ourselves than waiting for those who come and create more complications in Africa. Molombe Hans is writing from Boya. Daisy from Kumba says, good evening, Mr. Liu, and to all the wonderful panelists. You have all nailed it. Kudos. Good evening to you, Daisy. Stop calling. When you call, you disturb me from reading. Leo, you can't buy the fingers that feed you. Take. That is the key problem with Cameroon historians. Many historians are fond sitting, follow others on TV and criticize. Putting food on the table is more important to them. Any TV historical debate might hinder them from putting food on their table. Secondly, fear of the unknown. Thanks. Gentle writing from Boya. Gentle is a history teacher. Mr. Kum, may the Almighty Lord continue to bless you. Thank God Prince Joel came to Mukage and saw how Mukage is. Take the message to our hierarchy. We shall always continue to support you as a son of Mukage. Mukage is not interested in all what is going on. We support ourselves for the better. Thank you. Good evening to you. Would have loved to know your name, but Prince Joel has gotten your message. Uchiba Nelson says, I wanted to contribute, but line is not going. Anglophone historians know the history but are afraid of government's oppression. Meanwhile, other historians know the history but are intellectually dishonest because the truth doesn't favor them. They can't quote UN Resolution 1608 and others. Okay, good evening to you, Ochiba Nelson, writing from the US. Good evening, Mr. Liu. Interesting topic. When I hear you people say these historians don't have the courage to tell the truth, then what do they teach in school? Sure lies. Mr. Kum is writing from Buddha. Mr. Tazi says, I think the government is not yet ready to solve this problem. Experts are not listened to by the stakeholders, and most of the experts in Cameroon fear to speak the truth, especially if the truth would not favor some people. I would suggest that they group themselves up and discuss on how to solve the problem and come up with a written document on the way forward. Kudos. Also, do not forget that some people are doing everything to hide the truth. Good evening and thank you for contributing, Mr. Tazi. Stop calling, please. Everybody's calling. We can't read all the messages. We have to end at this juncture. Jarvis, thank you for coming.
Thank you very much, and a special good evening to those who are watching us in my village, in Way, and also those who are watching us from the Catholic University in Boya, to let them know that admissions for 2022 will soon be launched.
Okay, thank you for coming, Prof. Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Liu, for the opportunity, and I want to say that it's always a privilege when I'm here to talk about things that are happening in our country and in Africa. I want to greet those up there in my village who are watching us right now in Babanki, and some of you who are watching, and those of you who are at Bukwango, my second village, watching at me right now.
Okay, I want to thank you too for coming from Boya, Mr. Nji. You came with a lot of energy this evening.
Yeah, thank you. I think if there's one thing I owe this nation, Cameroon, is to let the people know exactly what we have to do as a people. I want to thank the staffs and volunteers of Rere Habit immensely for their effort, which they have been putting together. You know, some of the children whom we are working on, they too sat for the common entrance, and God willing, they will be sitting for the first school. I want to thank the My 16 community, which of course, some people thought that our lives were going to be on the guillotine the day we decided that we have to put up a center for students and pupils to study who could not relocate out of My 16 and who came from other ends, because My 16 was relatively more calm than the areas where they left. And I want to say that if there is one thing we need to do, is to keep on supporting those that are in need, because that is the mission of every human being.
You are finished.
He came with energy.
You really came with energy. Thank you for coming.
Thank you immensely, Mr. Leonard, for having me once more. I'm happy to know, like I was saying, that Mr. J is building up a very strong fan club for Prime R. I saw it myself. I want to say special good evening to you, Gabushi Brian, who is watching, to Kum Eric, and to a host of you who are watching out there.
It's Mr. Kum Eric.
Kum Eric, who is your brother. He is the assistant mayor. Oh, the assistant due, assistant due to Mr. J, who is watching the program. And to a host of you who are watching around Emmanuel there at the park in mile 16, or rather in Mr. J. It's always a privilege, Mr. Liu. Okay. Something strong is building up in Mr. J's on the side.
Special greetings to the fan club in Nyasoso, in Tole, in Kumba, and in Bamenda. We are glad to note that you appreciate the work we do out there. We also want to thank the production team, Eli and Desmond, and to you, Tabi Tambe Brian, supervising the work we do out here. Stay blessed. Bye-bye.